Hey, Shaun. It's good to see you.
Hey, David, thanks for having me.
So, Shaun, you are a PA and you are licensed a lot of places.
That's correct. Yes.
Where's your home state?
I live in Tennessee.
I always think of Tennessee as three states: West, Central, and East. Where do you live?
Right. I live in the Knoxville, Tennessee, which is East Tennessee.
Okay. All right. How long have you been a PA?
I have been a PA since December 1st of 2022.
Wow. And in that short amount of time, you got licensed in what, South Carolina, Texas? I mean, all kind of places, right?
That's correct. I'm licensed in 9 states.
What did you do before you were a
I was actually, most of my career, I was an insurance adjuster. And then I made the switch.
All right. So you're that special brand that knows both sides of the coin really well.
Yes, I think that
I always say that you guys, I think it helps you. I mean, you know like the mechanics of what's going on at the carrier, and you also are probably a good policy professional too.
I believe so. Yes, correct.
Why did you leave IA work?
I've noticed a trend in the insurance adjusting industry that was heading to a place that I did not like. However, the icing on the cake was when I was deployed to work Hurricane Ian in Florida in 2022. I caught the insurance company that I was working with committing what I perceived to be insurer fraud. At that point, that's when enough is enough. I couldn't do it anymore.
Did you feel like once you had basically seen that fraud and fessed up about it, did you feel like you got blackballed by the industry? I mean, by the carrier?
I certainly did. I knew that was a pretty rough night for me when I discovered it. I was by myself, alone in an Airbnb in Florida, and I noticed that there was a collaboration that had occurred in Exact Analysis, which, as I'm sure you know, is the system that powers the main estimating system that many insurance companies use. I discovered what was happening. Then it was like, because at this point I had been an adjuster for over 20 years. And at that point I had all of these memories from sometimes 15, 20 years before. It was connecting the dots on what had been happening. And that was a pretty bad moment for me personally, because you give your heart and soul.
So what were the mechanics of what was happening?
Well, in a nutshell, what was happening was the firm / insurance company, I discovered that they were changing our estimates, but not only that, they were leaving our names on the paperwork, the letters and the estimates, etc., and presenting those documents to the insureds as though they were our work product. As you know, I'm not an attorney. However, my attorney advised that just changing estimates in and of itself is not fraud, but presenting that information as though it was that changed information as though it was my work product, that is the fraud that occurred. So that's what was discovered.
And let me just ask you, was this new behavior, or was this behavior that was happening that you didn't notice before? I would say it's more prolific in the last couple of years, but that's just, maybe I just see it more.
You are 100% correct. I believe that this behavior has occurred before, but much more subtly than I see it now, and that I witnessed in 2022. It's like they weren't even trying to cover up the fact that they were doing that, which really surprised me that they were so arrogant about how they do things.
Yeah, I think when any of this comes to a point of hubris, I think it just starts to change everything. You know, I had a very longstanding IA that I know really well call me one night during Irma, not Irma. What was the last one? It was
Ian.
What was the one that hit Ian? That's right. It's just so many eyes. But that storm had come in, and he called me and he said, "David, I got a problem." He said, "Every time I completely pay for a tile roof, and I mean, like, I'm talking like it's wrecked, like it cannot be repaired, they turn my estimate into 124 tiles to replace, even though I've written on there that it's not replaceable." because it's no longer made. I've been turning the ITEL with it. And I said, well, has that happened a lot? He said, it's happened in my last 20 files. And he said, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, I don't know what to tell you to do. I said, but it sounds like they're trading on your name though. And that just, I don't think that's fair. And so he called me the following morning and I said, hey, what's up? He says, I'm at Kinko's. I said, what you doing at Kinko's? He says, I'm copying the complete claim files and putting them in folders. And I said, what are you going to do with those? He says, I'm dropping them out of the insureds and telling them to go take this to their attorney. They'll know what to do with it. And he dropped all those off, packed up his truck and went back home. He's like, I'm not doing it. I can't do it. I won't do it. And I thought that was just I just thought you take a guy who's been in the business for 20 years and you have him to that hard of a turn all at once. Like that had to be really painful for him. And I'm sure it was painful for you when you realized, they're about to change my life.
Yeah. I knew what was going to happen. And because insurance companies don't like it when you tell on them for doing something wrong, but I have kids. What am I going to tell my kids? That it's okay to do that or and everything. So I actually called a friend of mine who is a PA in Florida, and I was like, dude, I don't know what to do. This is my career we're talking about, stuff. And it was either the next day or the day after he calls me up and he says, hey, I work with Stephen Michael Bush, who I didn't even know who he was at the time.
Right.
But I told Stephen about what you discovered, and he wants to talk with you. But before I give him your contact information, I wanted to ask you permission. And I said, okay, I'll talk to him and stuff. And so then Stephen called me right away that same day, and I told him what had happened, and then he says, okay, well, do you know anybody else that I would be willing to at least talk to me or whatever, and I said, yeah. I said, I know a couple of people, because after I discovered, I called a friend of mine who was working with the same firm, same insurance company, who also knew another person that was doing that, and both that was happening to them too, and that's when we decided to publicly blow the whistle on the goings on of Florida in that particular situation.
And is that going to ultimately net in something criminal?
Here's a frustration that I currently have. We are 2 years past this happening. We have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt who did what, who changed what, when they changed it, how they changed it, and everything. We've proven it beyond a shadow of a doubt. And my frustrating point is the state of Florida, DFS, Jimmy Petronas, Governor DeSantis have done absolutely nothing other than make up lies about me and the other whistleblowers. For example, the DFS said that, we subpoenaed them and they did not respond. Bull crap. Okay, that never happened. They said, they were supposed to, come to Tallahassee and testify. We subpoenaed them. No, they didn't. Well, we've called them. They haven't responded. Bull. Okay, that did not happen, and so I've asked myself why, and of course, I'm involved with the American Policyholders Association, which Doug Quinn is the chairman. I'm sorry, I don't know what his actual title is, but he runs that organization.
He's an awesome individual.
It's not difficult to follow the money. You have to ask yourself, well, why does the insurance industry have such an interest in donating millions upon millions of dollars to politicians? I'll let people decide for themselves with that.
Well, I have a saying that I say about it, when people don't understand this, I tell them this. There's never going to be a time in the world that we don't have meth, because you can spend $60 and make $500 on meth. And the math is just too good. So somebody's going to make the shake and bake, no matter what happens. And there's never going to be a time that not paying that last $100,000 on that claim is not going to be a rewarded thing. It's not going to be a good thing, because it's just too good, and I get it. I don't like it, but I get it. Mm-hmm. I mean, but so when you moved out to be a PA, you went from, basically getting all your work through exact analysis, through TPAs and carriers, how did you market yourself?
Well, that was a very, very stressful and worrisome time because I need to make a living to support my family. So
Right.
and once we blew the whistle, that YouTube video went across the industry like wildfire, right? But not to wish bad on anybody, but thankfully on Christmas Eve, which was a couple of months later, pretty much every water line in the Southeast decided to break at the same time, right? So thank goodness I still had some firms that, regardless of me telling the truth about what had happened, I was able to work through that while I was marketing as a public adjuster to contractors and
Nice.
restaurant companies and plumbers. And eventually, in about May of 2023, I became so busy as a PA that I told my firms that I can't work with them any longer because I was too busy.
Nice.
So
That's beautiful.
It was a huge blessing.
Well, Shaun, I think that you started a trend, okay, in a way that you probably don't recognize, because what we've seen really legit, very good independent adjusters that have years of experience. Mm-hmm. The kind of guys who have sat down with Ms. Smith thousands and thousands of times and says, hey, these are your responsibilities after the loss. This is what I'm going to do. And I've actually adjusted the claim. And, you guys jumping off into the PA world is just, I think it's awesome because you come so qualified. And I just think it's neat. In my career, I was just like a consultant and I just wrote estimates, but I ultimately sat as the general manager of two different public adjusting firms for a short amount of time so I could actually interface with the carrier. So I'd have a good understanding of that. And you have just such a good understanding. I had a fire on December 3rd of last year. And, I had a fire. I got my family out in 38 seconds. And had we not, we'd have died from just smoke inhalation. It was just that much smoke. And I mean, it's a pretty catastrophic loss. Absolutely. And, I'm lucky. I have PAs and attorneys and mitigation specialists and all these people that I know really well in the industry who've advised me on everything. But I've really come to think in a way that I never have before, that I think anything over a basic water loss or a really small roof claim, an insured shouldn't do it if they don't have help. It shouldn't. I mean, agree. Look at what happens in Florida right now. In Florida, they used to not, I used to, I get like listed as expert on like 350 cases, and I go to court twice in a year. Maybe deposed 300 times, but I mean, I just wouldn't go to court because they wasn't going to court. They were going to settle it. And now with like the law change in Florida, I mean, I'm in court tomorrow for like the 32nd time this year, and it's just weird. And believe it or not, what they're doing in court to beat the insured in court? What they're doing is they're going after them for duties after a loss. And they're mostly making up something that says that we did this and that, you didn't do this or you didn't. Like the one that is my favorite that's been used so much is some adjuster shows up and says to the insured, is there damage inside? And the insured says, this is my rental property. I didn't really look at it really close. I just came here to meet you. You can come in. And the guy jumps in his car and leaves. And that turns into 2 years later, what? He didn't let the IA inspect the interior of the home. And they won doing that. That wouldn't but if you did that same thing, he would have had to sign a waiver, right?
Exactly.
It would be a moment that was, because I don't care who you are in our business. If you're looking at a claim, you look at it all. Even if it's not damaged, you look at it because.
Yeah. Yet Jimmy Petronas calls public adjusters locusts.
Yes, he does. That I don't know, man. There's so much about that just feels dirty as it can be. I mean, to me, you go out to Texas, okay? You go out to Texas, and politically speaking, Texas and Florida are pretty similar in a lot of ways.
Sure.
Okay, like good and crazy, and and you go down a street, you're not going to find that they all have the same carrier. You're going to find that there's no density of carriers in any given way. They make them spread it out. because that's actuarially sound practice, right?
Correct. Yes.
But they don't do that in Florida. And so, and yeah, last time I saw Doug Quinn speak, he said that the head of the Office of Insurance Regulation came out and said that there was at no time in history has an insurance company failed because of fraudulent attorneys, PAs, or roofers. It just didn't happen. He said, if you want to know, if you want to know how that's true, just remember for the 10 years we didn't have a storm, we had all kind of carriers fail. That's because of business practices. That's not because of flood.
Absolutely, 100%.
But so Shaun, what's your favorite kind of claim?
My favorite kind of claim is probably the most catastrophic kind, because that's when I really get to have the most meaningful, positive impact with somebody. So typically, I really like helping people with fires, or some kind of a tornadic damage.
I think that fire in general is probably the most people just don't understand it. It's this notion that there's anything like a small fire. Like, I can burn something for 30 minutes in your kitchen, and there's not going to be a square inch of your property that's not going to be touched in some way, And I mean, that's just wild to see. Do you do any work in Chattanooga?
I do, yes, because I'm just up the road in Knoxville.
I got introduced to a really fun thing in Chattanooga recently.
What's that?
I did not know that Chattanooga has a 30% rule, much like most places have like a 51% rule. Mm-hmm. But Chattanooga has a 30% rule. And if you hit 30%, if your insurance claim hits 30% of the worth of the property, the worth of that building, not the worth of the ground, but the building itself, then you've got to bring the whole property up to code.
That's right. I don't think that's
you'd be surprised at
Tennessee thing.
What's that?
I believe that's a Tennessee thing. That's not just Chattanooga, is it?
I think it's just, I don't know. It's the only place I've seen it enforced is in Chattanooga. They sent me a letter and said they were going to enforce that law on this particular loss I was on.
I had a claim.
So it's not over yet. It's settled. It's settled, but it ain't over yet.
When I was an adjuster,
you got a claim?
Not very long ago, when I was an insurance adjuster, I had a claim at a coin laundry in downtown Knoxville. And so my initial estimate was like $35,000, but I recommended to the carrier, I said, you need a $65,000 reserve on this. And so the manager of that insurance company in that area called me, and he's out of Texas or something. Anyways, he called me. He's like, why are you recommending such a high reserve? Blah, blah, blah. And the car just hit a wall or whatever and everything. And anyway, so I told him, I said, well, I said, this is downtown Knoxville. I said, I said, they can make you upgrade the entire building for electrical code, and it's completely out of code. Oh, no, it's not, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, okay, whatever, About 6 months later, he retires, and I get a call from the new manager asking me to handle it and make it go away, and the end estimate, my agreement with the contractor was right at $65,000, because the city came in because somebody called on that place of business and complained. So the city came in and made them upgrade the entire building. It's crazy how that works.
I have found in my own practice of whenever I'm doing really any kind of claim work, I love to get the permit department's generally not going to write me a letter. Okay. Right. But I can ask them this one question. What will it take on a permit for you to give me a certificate of occupancy? And I can get them to come see me for that. They won't write it down, but they will tell you what they expect to see. And like when I brought that person in from my county in Florida, he walked in my structure and he said, "You got something to write with?" I'm like, okay. And he just said, and he just pitched it out. He says, "I want all of this gone. I want stud work only. I don't want any floors. I don't want any fixtures. I don't want any plumbing. I don't want any electric." Okay. And And he said, you're going to have to take the sheathing off the roof because you got to recertify all the trusses because you got to replace 4 trusses on the other end. And he said, you got to replace all these windows and all of these doors. And he said, I just want to warn you one thing. He says, if somebody crawls up in that attic to do your open wall inspection and they find rust on the all thread and the metal, we're going to put this baby in a dumpster. Just like that. I said, you got a card? And I sent that to the carrier just like that and said, this is the scope he outlined, and that's what
they can do a lot of things to get that change of occupancy.
That's yeah. And like I happen to live in a county that's super specific about what you're going to do. Like they're really like, if they show up at your house and you had a little bit of EFIS damage and it's the old EFIS that looks like an ant farm behind it, they'll be like, yeah, you got to replace all that kind of thing. They're real good at just like, no, we don't like that in our county. That's trash. And they can get by with it. And I think like in places like Chattanooga, they can get by with it too. But I just found it interesting. I also found it interesting in Tennessee that they've just got a really interesting set of laws about unfair claims practices. And I mean, it's longer and more thorough than probably, anywhere I know of. And that's pretty good for Tennessee for sure.
It is. The Department of Insurance does not do a lot to protect policyholders in this state, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I'll
tell you later what I'm doing. Oh.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, no, I'll tell you later what I'm doing to help you out up there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So there are times where
I need to change Tennessee before it's all said and done.
That would be great.
Go ahead.
There are times where if a contractor or a PA files a DOI complaint, instead of addressing the complaint, the Department of Insurance tends to go after the contractor or PA that files the complaint. I don't file complaints on behalf of the insurers. I will, if something wrong is happening, I will suggest that, as an option that an insured can do that, but I don't do that anymore. I've got a family to protect. I don't need the state coming after me.
Yeah. And that's shameful is what it is.
I agree.
A very good PA in Florida who complained about 2 insurance companies and had an investigation opened on him 6 minutes later. And
awful.
I mean,
it's,
and they didn't find anything. He didn't do anything. He hadn't done anything wrong. And I don't know. I just think, but I mean, one thing's for sure. I mean, we can, what I found that just hasn't changed though, is if we bring the receipts, if we bring the details, it's ultimately going to get paid, at least in my experience.
Yeah. You got to need to
unless of course I'm dealing with somebody's, appraisal mob or that group of IAs that are just in various places. I work all over the country, so I get a lot of views of things that I wouldn't get otherwise, and it's always interesting to watch. Matter of fact, I told a guy the other day in a state I was in. He goes, "What are you doing here? What are you doing here up from Florida?" I said, "I'm here to break up the appraisal mafia." He goes, "Who's that?" I said, "Well, you are one of them." And he's like, "Why am I one of them?" I said, "You just asked me why I was here." As if I didn't belong. You didn't catch the clue that you just act like the mafia. And
that's funny.
And I said that the core characteristic of a mafia is someone who thinks they deserve it when they don't. And that's why I call them mafia, because that's what they are. And we find them in lots of places, but it's super fun to break that up. It's hilarious actually. But now, so is it just you working by yourself? You have anybody working with you now?
Well, I have actually recently joined forces with another PA firm, which is Abba Claims Consultant out of Dallas. The corporate is in Dallas, Texas. CEO is Chess Bostic, and I recently.
Yes, I know Chess. He's a great guy.
Yeah, super great guy. What happened is last year I was actually referred on a really, really big church in Fort Worth. So I flew down there and, rented the car, and I went and took a look at their property, and I suggested to them, I said, yes, there's certainly a claim here, etc. I'd be glad to, to represent you and everything. And they said, oh, well, we're going to, after their committees voted and everything, they said, well, I think we're just going to try to do it ourselves. And I suggested, well, I really don't think that's a good idea, but if that's what you'd like to do, then keep my number in case you ever need to get in touch with me. So that was earlier last year, and then fast forward to about 5 months ago, I get a phone call from somebody else at the church who is retired now, but he used to be the vice president in Owens Corning. And he said, "Hey, Shaun," he said, you came down here last year and took a look at everything, didn't you? You're the PA that we talked to. And I said, "Yes, sir." And he says, "Well," he says, "the insurance company is paying us $200 and something thousand. Then they send an engineer out, and and now they want us to pay $100,000 back. And the membership committee or the committee is ready to write a check back to the insurance company for $100,000." So I immediately told him, I said, "Okay, well, first of all, there's no take backsies." I said, "I've got a partner in Dallas, which." I hadn't had this conversation with Chess, but I knew what he would say because I know him. And I said, I've got a partner in Dallas, and whatever. So I call up Chess and I said, "Hey," I said, "will you partner with me on this claim? Because it just makes more sense to split the fee rather than for me to drop everything I'm doing here in the surrounding states and stuff to go every time I need to do that." So then so when that happened and we partnered on that claim, that's when Chess and Tobias Patch started talking to me about about joining forces. So now I'm actually their chief sales officer and responsible for bringing in claims and fostering relationships with referral sources to be able to grow our reach, extend our reach as a company.
Well, it seems like you'd be good at that. You probably have one of the best sense of humors that I've ever seen from anybody online. Just consistently, you always make me laugh. It's never like abrasive or anything. It's just always funny, and I just love it.
People online get involved in so many things, politics or arguments or discuss. Life is too short. Politics are boring, so why not just enjoy dad jokes and or whatever, and just be silly. That's why I am. There are times, I must admit, where my wife, who by the way is my biggest cheerleader, and loves me to death, right? But there are times where she's like, "Shaun, I just or she'll actually, her favorite thing is to send me a text message of a screenshot of it, and I was like, "Really?" Or or I don't know. But, and so then I take the clue because might be dumb, but I wasn't born yesterday. So then I'll take that clue and be like, "Okay, you're right." So, or I'll delete a post if it's too stupid. But it's fun to have fun.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that in general, what I like about what you do is that I don't have to know a lot about you to know that you don't take yourself too seriously, and that's probably one of the best characteristics that I know. Let me ask you, Shaun, if you could change one thing in the insurance industry at the snap of a finger, what would it be?
Get back to where we were 25 years ago.
So we would let the adjusters adjust.
Exactly. We would let the adjusters adjust. We would empower adjusters to make decisions, because that's what the whole purpose of training is, to educate the adjusters to do what they're paid to do, and give them the autonomy. Yes, sorry. To be able to, to be able to make decisions, to do their jobs.
I think that's awesome. I was talking to somebody the other day. It's like if I go back 25 years ago, and let's say we had a PA, the PA is going to say to the insurance adjuster, "Let's get them dried in and this handled, and then let's figure it out from there." Okay, great. It wasn't like you had to show up and have everything perfectly done. You just had to show up and say, let's get started. It was just a different feel to it. It was like you work in a project.
Right. And adjusters and PAs were more of a team. It's just, and it's difficult to get back to the problem. There are bad players on both sides. I think you can agree with me on that, right? Absolutely. There are bad PAs. There are, just like there are bad adjusters, but there's a lot of really good PAs, and not all of them, Jimmy Petronas, are locusts. Okay. Just like there's a lot of good adjusters, I work with them daily. One thing that we need to also understand, David, is that there are literally thousands of insurance claims that are handled and settled on a daily basis without issues. People call me when they have issues.
Mhm.
So some PAs, I can understand how some public adjusters think that all insurance companies are bad. They're not, but I can understand at least why they would think that, because we get the calls when there's a problem, you know? So it's
Right.
difficult to work together as a team. But one of the issues is that, and I was trained when I was an adjuster, I was trained that all contractors and all PAs are bad. They're all crooks, right? And they're still trained that way right now, to this day, because one bad apple ruins a bushel. Okay, so there are adjusters
Yeah, it's true.
who have had bad experiences with PAs, and so what they do is they apply that as a blanket opinion upon all PAs, just like there's PAs who have had bad experiences with adjusters who apply that to all adjusters. So the problem is there's no give on either side, right? So they can't come together because nobody's willing to give. So then you have to rely on the government to get involved, and we know which way they're going to side. Okay, because even if they're trying to fix the problem, they can't fix it the right way because nobody cares enough to do it, and it's a shame.
Right.
It's a shame that it's not that hard to do. Like, I'll just take one state for example, Florida. All that you have to do is take 10 lawmakers, take 10 PAs, get in a room, lock the door, and don't come out until you have a solution in hand. That's not, but nobody wants to do that. Maybe that's
they don't want to do that. And I mean, it is also true that we got State Farm brokers run in the State House and the Senate all the way across the Panhandle in many places in South Florida. So it's evidently a cheap way to get influence. I have a theory. It's just a theory. I think we ought to not let the insureds file any claims anymore. Make them hire a public advocate, a PA, to assess the claim, see if it's a good claim, see if it fits within their policy, see if it's good for them to do. Because that a lot of claims you see, it's just not good for them to do that claim. It's not gonna net with anything major, and it's gonna cause them other problems. You file the claim, but when you file the claim, you do the right data loss, you give the right notices, you do all the things you're supposed to do because you're a claims professional, because there's this expectation that the insured's supposed to be a claims professional, and they're not. Right. And I just think it would be really cool if every one of these claims, that these legitimate claims, were met by a PA, then it would be every claim. And so it would change the way that you dealt with. I mean, I understand you still have bad characters, but I mean, it would turn more collaborative because you had two professionals working all the time. Mm-hmm. That's all I thought. And maybe Pollyanna, but I mean, I could see a logic in doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely understand your logic. The problem is that sometimes insurance companies don't want that to happen, but other times because it's like so like in my state, for example, a lot of insurance companies, this is just a theory also, right? But a lot of some insurance companies are basically forcing an insurance hand, making things go to appraisal because they know that only a minute fraction of insureds are going to push back and take it to the next level. And some insurance companies don't want to go into a place like appraisal because they know that they're now going to be forced to pay what they want or what they're required to pay, what the amount of loss is, stuff. But then you have the other side that who sometimes their focus is to increase the claim as much as they could possibly get because as public adjusters we're on a percentage, right? Well, that's not what our job should be. Our job should be, let's look at what we're trying to accomplish here, and if you have reasonable minds, great things can happen. The problem is right now in our industry, we don't have reasonable minds, and that is a frustration point.
I always say, like in appraisal, 3 people should come to mostly the same conclusion unless somebody's telling a lie. If they're, I mean, that's what I find over and over again. I also can't wait to thrash some of these umpires that charge rates that are just egregious, like $19,000 on an $80,000 claim. What in what world is that okay?
Yeah, I'm not a big government guy at all, but I do think that certain regulations would be important to be in place when it comes to things like that, because that's ridiculous.
I think the reason why I don't think regulations have to happen. I think it just, what I've noted, and I mean, because we do so much appraisal in Florida, I've noted in Florida, a lot of the really bad characters just don't stay because it's a small community. And when we start finding the guys that are doing something egregious, we're just like, see you. Wouldn't want to be you. And I mean, that's it. And so I think to some level that, but do you think we're going to have a hurricane?
I don't know. I mean, we had the one that I think it was a Cat 2 recently, Francine, wasn't it Francine? That last week.
Francine, and yeah.
I got the,
and then down there they had Beryl.
That's right. Yeah, in Houston. But when I was an adjuster, I was always looking at my monitors and trying to say, okay, well, this is coming in and stuff. I am happy as a lark doing what I'm doing, and I do not have. It's not that I wouldn't travel, but I do not have any desire to be a road warrior. So because of that, I don't really watch hurricanes as much as I used to.
Yeah, well, Tennessee is going to get thrashed a little in the summer and a whole lot in the winter every single year.
We do, yes.
It really does.
I think that there's
everyday
need for public adjusters, because there are times where insurance companies don't get it right. There's a lot of times they do, but there's, I will tell you, I have a large loss on my house right now. We had a big water damage. The insurance company that we have, there hasn't been an issue, and it's really gone well. So I know that there are plenty of insurance claims that go well, but it's the times where they don't, when they need to call us.
Yeah, and I give my carrier some grief, but what they did do is they paid me about 80% of my dwelling policy. They just need to pay a little more. I mean, they did do that, and they completely wanked on my and they got me in long-term housing, and that was good, and that was not any kind of, it wasn't hard. But then they gave me $13,000 for a house in contents for a house that they wrote a scope to completely gut. So I asked my adjuster, I said, hey, could you tell me, like, do you think it would cost more than $10,000 if my contents were not damaged, just to remove them from my house? Do you think it would cost more than 13? She's like, yeah. I said, so you think maybe that's wrong? She's like, yeah, probably. And I'm like, you got a complete house, but your contents is only 13 grand. Something's terribly, 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 terribly wrong. And it's just, there's just always something on a claim that's going to give you trouble. But what I do know, though, that the reason why I think PAs are really, really important beyond what people understand is when you have a substantial claim of any type, if it's going to displace you from your home, that is a level of trauma that is dangerous for your marriage, dangerous for your relationships, dangerous for your job. It's got all kinds of like really, really bad shit. And I don't like, and just having somebody to show up and say, hey, this is what's going to happen here. Right. Just say, hey, you just had a fire. And we say sometimes you get double for a fire because you also get a divorce. So I'm just telling you, stay close to each other, because it's going to be stressful for you. Don't mistake that stress for something that it's not.
Yeah.
And that's huge.
I tell people all the time, I say, if you have a big loss or people that refer me, whether it's a contractor or somebody else, especially on commercial losses, I recommend bringing me in on the front end, because a lot of times, even in some residential policies, but for the most part, commercial policies, there's so many moving parts, so many endorsements, that there's no way an insured, especially like a church or is going to be able to understand the intricacies of the policy. And I have a very clear understanding of how to read policy, how to interpret it properly according to the law of the land and the courts, and things like that. So I always recommend bringing me in on the front end on those types of claims, especially.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's not even that. It's just that, one thing I really like about really the southeast part of Florida is they're very accustomed to doing professional service contracts. So when they hire a PA, it's like, hey, Let me know if you need anything. Take it. And so I wish that more people would like think.
I agree, but most of
Can you
what
hold on
I
1 second, Sean?
yes,
Sean, can you hold on 1 second?
yes.
Sorry about that, Sean.
Oh,
What were you
that's
saying?
most of what I do in the especially in the South, is educate people on what public adjusters do, what we're for, what insurance appraisers are for, and what the processes are. Because for some reason, people in the South are by and large don't understand what public adjusting is, and I think that a lot of people think that oh, I've been insured with so and so for 40 years, that they're going to take care of me, and then 6 months later an 80-year-old man is calling me saying, I can't believe they're doing this to me, Shaun, can you help me?
I think New York in general does some things with insurance that's nice. There's some things they do terrible. They do a couple of things nice. They have Reg 10 there, which allows you to get the insured to sign, and then you get paid directly from the carrier rather than waiting behind the mortgage company, which is awesome. And it's a Reg 10. It's not even statutory. It's just the Department of Insurance said, let's do this. And it lowered litigation. It lowered all kind of problems. And that means that you could work for anybody there, that even the people you thought that wouldn't pay you. You know what I mean? Like those people. But like, I go do work in New York. It's not uncommon for me to watch the local news and see 15 seconds of, if you have a claim, hire a public adjuster. Look here, we don't get paid unless you get paid. And it's just their association that's actually doing that, doing like a public intervention to tell people, hey, this is what you have. And I think that all these organizations for PAs should do that. They should do public intervention. And I think that would be the strongest thing they could do, because let's face it, if you had more people working with PAs, it makes it less likely that you're going to have craziness at a legislature, because you've got more people who are better informed.
I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, I think so. But I don't know. I keep thinking about, I knew you had reported on the carriers on that, and I often thought about it when I saw you and I saw that YouTube and everything. I just wondered how hard that was going to be on you, just having to step away from your life's work.
Yeah. So
most people don't have that. Most people do it would be the equivalent of me jumping out and doing, desk adjuster work.
Yeah.
It wouldn't seem right.
I bowed out shortly after we blew the whistle. I personally bowed out of the limelight very quickly. And I have a reason for that. There are a couple other whistleblowers who were oh yeah, interview here, interview here, interview. I do want to be clear. So on the reason for that, for me, first of all, I have no desire to get attention. I'm a dad. I don't have the luxury of
right.
Okay, I just you're a dad. I don't have a luxury of pride. I know I'm a dork and try to be funny or whatever, like on social media, or whatever. But when it comes right down to it, I don't need attention. Okay. Secondly, I was trying to navigate going for transitioning from independent adjusting to public adjusting, and so I didn't want to interfere with that, because I have bills to pay just like everybody else, and it was a very difficult process for me. Blowing the whistle, I lost 2 friends, one of which went to my wedding. Okay. I had a handful of people there at my wedding. So to come to be on my side of the wedding, because I only had a very small handful, you had to mean something to me. Okay. But some people are just so in the insurance industry that they just can't believe he thought I was a liar. Right. Even though I proved beyond a shadow of a doubt everything that had happened, but whatever. It is what it is, So and I was also afraid because some in my family are in the insurance business, so I didn't want to affect their livelihoods either, So
I get it. No,
in my mind, I had a lot going on. Those are the reasons.
Yeah, but you did tell the truth. You did tell the truth in one way or the other. I got really, really mad at a guy a few months back, and I had to apologize to him like 7 times before he'd forgive me. It was really out of line. But one of the things I'd said to him was, I'd say, if your kids were to see you do this, would they be proud of you? And that was really cruel, but he was doing something really nefarious. But I still was out of line. But I just think it's I always think about it. We had in the run up to World War II, we had some very, 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 very good people who got caught up in a mess because they were trying to save themselves. And I always tell the people that I work with and say, look, that guy you're talking to sometimes he's just trying to make sure his family's okay. And sometimes he's in a bad spot. And, it stings.
It does. And at the time, my daughter was 13. She's 15 now. But I don't know exactly when it was, but not very long, maybe a month after the release of the YouTube video. I didn't know it was going to be a big thing, but I knew somebody needed to know about it because it can't happen. And I go back to, well, what am I going to tell my kids? I didn't tell my kids about it at all because I didn't, I just didn't know really how to approach that and handle it in such a way that they understood, because I have a son and a daughter and a son, and my wife has two, right? But about a month after the release of the whistleblower video, I got a text message from my daughter, Maddie, and it's of that YouTube video saying, "Hey, Daddy, this is you." And I thought, that's when I was like, how did you even know that, had happened? So that's when we really started having the conversation about what it means, what fraud is, what it means, and the ramifications that it could have on a career or a life, and I, up until that point, I had no idea how far of a reach that was.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. I just, I'll give you an example, and I don't begrudge anybody that has to do this, but I have a tremendous number of people that watch me online. Okay. I do. And most of them never say anything. They just watch, because if they put something in public, they're scared it's going to hurt their job. Even if it's innocuous, they're scared of what will. And I get it. I just think it's kind of a shame. But I do think that at some point, okay, at some point in time, it's going to make sense to again make a law that every claim has to have an insurance adjuster. But I think we ought to make a pseudo state agency where all the adjusters work for that agency. And so when you, insurance carrier, need an adjuster, you punch a button online and it ships you an adjuster. And now that person works for you on this claim. You can't decide who you got. It's just somebody who's certified, who's in this pool. Now, I think the backside of that too is you'd put a lot more requirements for continuing education and some other. You could probably build a much better group. But the point is, because they're only going episodically, they're only just bumping in and bumping out, it's not going to be as intimate a relationship. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So theoretically it might be so, but you'd have to have both of those. You kind of have to make it like Australia, because that's kind of how Australia works. It's you have a PA and a public advocate and an insurance advocate on every claim, and it comes out of that lottery. So it's kind of neat, because they have problems like everybody else, just not as bad. So I think we're going to do it. So you got a big week coming up?
This week I do. I'm working on letting people know that we're that we're here and continuing to foster relationships with those, and just work and I say fighting the good fight. I don't like to use the word fight, but sometimes you have to. But it's just it's a passion. I'm very passionate about being able to help people and not allowing anybody to get taken advantage, especially the elderly or a veteran or single mom or something, those kinds of.
I just think that what you do as PAs, personally, I think it's kind of a superhero level stuff. And this is why you wouldn't think this, but I told you I managed those. I did the general management of those PA firms decades ago. And, I asked the PA I was working with at the time, I said, look, man, these people keep calling me. These insureds keep calling me. And they keep asking me questions that I don't know how to answer. Like, when are they going to get approved for more ALE? Well, I don't know. And then, and after a while, I said to the PA, I said, look, it seems like every time they get put in a hotel somewhere, at 45 days, somebody's going to call you from the Walmart parking lot crying. and saying, you think you're going to get a divorce? And the PA goes, yeah, that's what happens on the 45th day in the hotel. Yep, it does. It's just like, he just absolutely positively knew it. He's just like, wow. There's these guys I met out of Chicago that actually partnered with a mental health a psychology group. And they actually, when they get the claim, the psychology group comes in and works with the insured on their mental health stuff. And do you know why? The reason why they did it was so cool. They said it wasn't, I mean, they want to do it because it's a good thing. But the real reason was their first and second year don't have the ability to turn that off. And so they end up burning out really quickly because they see all these people in distress. And by getting someone else to deal with the distress and them dealing with the claim, it let them actually do their job and learn their job to the point that they were better at managing themselves. And I think that's
that's terrific. The really one of the really cool parts about Abba claims that I'm working with now is that we provide updates on a weekly basis to our insureds. Right, the amount of technology.
Awesome.
Technology, artificial intelligence, and desk adjusting that we use. We actually have somebody for each different part of the claim that's a specialist in that part. We have people that are really good at inspections, taking photographs, writing estimates, etc. We have people that are really good at desk adjusting, and then we have, of course, me, the chief sales. We have also chief marketing officer, and then in the next few months, I'll be bringing on a staff of outside sales as well, so that we can expand our reach and do that kind of stuff. So we have some really exciting things that's really going to help with the customer experience. Because
that's awesome. I mean, Chess is such a good guy.
He is,
such a good guy. I mean, I'm so glad you're working with him.
Well, and I told him, I said, and he says, hey, why? He did ask me. He says, why'd you call me on this big loss? And to partner with me, you could have called anybody else. And I said, I didn't call anybody else because I said I want to learn from you. And so he is a terrific mentor. He's even a better person. And I couldn't be happier with us being able to join forces and expand our reach to help more people. And we have a great team. I think so. Good.
I think today, the PA is more important than the PA has ever been. And as long as I've been in the industry, I think the PA is more important today than ever, because I mean, it's entirely possible in most of these states that you don't get an adjuster, you get somebody else, or you get like Seek Now, and that's not adjusting.
Correct.
And like you take Florida, and the law literally changed where I'm responsible to validate my claim, not the carrier. I mean, that's quite a pivot.
It is,
and
the law also changed because of us speaking up and blowing the whistle, and that is that the insurance company can no longer change an estimate unless they first go to the insured and say, hey, here's the estimate that the independent adjuster wrote, but here's what we actually think it is in the changed estimate, right? So, but what I think that's going.
Do you know what the way around that is, by the way?
Yeah, Seek Now.
I'm going to tell you the way they're doing it right now.
Go ahead.
They have a way to do it now, but they're not doing it with the adjuster. They're doing it with the contractor they get, because the law says that they can't change the adjuster's estimate.
There's always
but they're changing the contractor's estimate. So like the estimate I have in front of me that they paid on was a contractor's estimate. Now, the funny thing about that particular contractor's estimate, because evidently the contractor was drinking and was on Facebook, and he sent me a message that said, I estimated for this much, and I'd really like to get your business.
Wow.
And so when I said to my carrier I said, you sent this, I said the name of the adjuster. I said, you sent this very qualified adjuster out. And he said he was going to do evaluation because he couldn't find a way to not make it a total loss. And you sent Paul Davis, and that guy spent like 9 minutes in the house and then said, nah, I got to call the DA. This is like complete gut. I mean, like, there's not going to be much anything here. And then they sent out the contractor with my estimate to validate my estimates, because nobody had come up with an estimate yet. And they walked in the door and said, we already found $40,000 worth of stuff that you didn't include. I said, yeah, I was being conservative because I'm a claims professional. I'm scared to death that I'm going to do something that looks like it's sketchy, And anyway, and so So they paid me like $170,000 less than that last estimate that they were given by their contractor. But they changed it on the contractor's letterhead and all. And so I noticed the pivot that they didn't do it to the, and I've seen this like 5 times. So they're doing it they're doing the same behavior, but they're doing it with the contract. The contractors don't have the same, they don't have the same ethical imperative that you have. You see, right. They just want that fee they were getting paid.
Yeah, I figured there'd be a way around it. There always is. Insurance companies employ some of the smartest people in the world, right? To figure things out, and so I figured that they would find a way around it, and I assumed it would be like a inspector type situation, but whether they use inspectors or contractors, same principle, and it's a shame that they can't just make a law that just makes people do what it's intended to do.
They should. What I think is in every state in the nation and in Canada, they should make a hard and fast rule that an insured's basic rights are that they will have an adjuster adjust their claim. The only people making a decision about my claim, the only people have never been in my structure.
Right.
That's the one criteria for settling my claim. You cannot be at my structure.
No,
I don't know what you do with that.
First of all, not all states require insurance adjusters to be licensed. Tennessee's one of those. And public adjuster, you have to have a license, but not as an insurance adjuster, right? But most desk adjusters, the ones that are making the decisions about your claim, most of them have never picked up a hammer in their life, right? So they don't understand construction except for what the insurance company has, the training that the insurance company has provided to them. Not saying it's bad training, but there's something to be said about experience too.
But it's like I told a mitigation professional that I knew, we were talking the other day, and I said, they're not going to come up with a machine that smells musty.
No.
They're not going to come up with a machine that knows the absolute grade of the property you're in, or what is old damage or new damage. There's just 101 things that like we do with our head that will never be done with anything else. So you're basically taking all that sensory information out when you take it to the desk adjuster. And the thing is, the desk adjuster is essentially an evangelist. They're supposed to find out what's important and carry it up the line, right?
Well,
and so, right. Guidelines, yeah. We're not going to talk about guidelines. I might get triggered.
That's a whole new
But no, I think people always laugh at me. I say that there's two places in the country that burn as soon as the temperatures drop below freezing, and that's Pennsylvania and Tennessee. I don't know why. Those two places, just like clockwork. Like I can tell you, my large loss team from my estimation group will be on a plane going to Pennsylvania right after that happens. Every year, doesn't matter what. It's crazy. But hey, man. Well, it's been really good talking to you, and really good to get to know you a little better. I'm proud of you. Yeah, I know you don't need it, but I'm proud of you. I think you're doing a good thing, and I'd like that you're working with good people, and you're doing a good thing.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it, and thank you so much for having me on and being able to talk to people about what happened and what we think should happen.
Yeah. Well, look, if you need me for anything, you know where to find me, and I look forward to seeing you again. Okay.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Darren.
Call me sometime and tell me something interesting going on, okay?
I will, for sure.
Because there's always something interesting in our game. That's why you can't quit. That's why you couldn't leave. You couldn't go work down at the local whatever, because this business is crazy, and the only way and we can't leave because everything else is boring. You know that.
Oh,
it's true.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's good. It's good to be here with the other crazy people.
Absolutely.
All right, man. You take care.
Thanks. Take care.
Hey.